you're a man of faith, a man of God, and your practice, I assume, and from what I've read, is deeply rooted in Christian faith and a Christian tradition. I have intimated to you that I'd love to start a discussion around the Desert Fathers and all the stuff that happened through Christianity around the practice, right? But this practice and goals are across all religions and no religion, all right? And whilst most of our listeners probably are from associate meditation and meditative practice with Buddhism, one of the things that I was surprised to learn that it's also rooted in a religion such as Islam. And to me, my question is not asking you to talk about other religions per se, but what are the similarities and maybe also what are the differences that in the various practices based on the various, shall we say, spiritual starts or spiritual, I'm not sure the right words there, I'm kind of lost. So I'll pass it over to somebody smarter to me than answer.
Well, thank you. Well, I think the question is a very pertinent question, very appropriate question for the 21st century. And at this point in our evolution, as we go through this global crisis, which has descended upon us, and which we don't understand the meaning or the direction of yet. We don't know what's going to happen. But this is a very important question. What do we have in common as human beings? And do we see our differences as divisions and threats and opportunities for violence and withdrawing in opposition to each other? Or do we see our differences as a sign of the rich diversity of human genius, and that we can pool these differences and find something to celebrate? That's the question for the 21st century, and we're seeing a crisis of globalization. We're also seeing an increase in nationalism and in selfishness on a global scale. So anything that asks us that question, what do we share most deeply in common as human beings, and how do we deal with our differences in a positive way? And I think meditation offers us an answer to that question. You talk about religion. We don't have time to talk about all the different religions, but let's just
understand.
Religion in itself is a human phenomenon. You can't eradicate it in the same way you cannot eradicate art or music. We are religious beings. There have been several attempts to eradicate religion in the last 100 or so years, and rationalism and science and scientism doesn't work. So we have to understand what religion means. Religion, like anything, can be used for good or for bad. There are three elements of religion, and they all have to be present in some form. One is the institutional, structural form, you know, the buildings, the clergy, the hierarchy, the chief monks, the Pope, the Dalai Lama, and so on. There is some kind of hierarchy in human organization. So that exists in religion too. Then you also have a second element, which is the intellectual element. So there are beliefs, there are theologies, there are doctrines, there are dogma, there are basic principles in every religion. And yet there is a third element, which is the mystical element. And it's this mystical element which is often the problem when it comes to the institutional or the intellectual. Because it's the mystical element of religion, if you like, the deep spiritual, experiential, interior element of religion, that is its true source and meaning. So we find this mystical element in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Islam, and in Christianity. Now that's where we can meet. And the essential elements of that mystical dimension are to be found in the practice of meditation. And there are three elements there: silence, stillness, and simplicity. Silence, stillness, and simplicity. When you meditate, whether you are a Buddhist or a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim, we are entering into that dimension of human experience where we find ourselves united rather than separated by our differences. That's the importance of meditation. Now, today, meditation has, often been presented and is popularly practiced just as a way of relieving stress. Of course it does, yes, but it's a great deal more than that. It has more meaning than that. And human beings can't be limited just to their problems, too much stress, I can't sleep, I get panic attacks. These are all symptoms of our affluent society and of our our unbalanced society. The more affluent, the richer we become, very often the more unhappy we become. So meditation has been used to relieve some of those symptoms of affluence. But meditation itself is much more important, because more than anything else, the human being needs meaning. We need to feel that life is meaningful. And what is meaning? Where do we find meaning? Meaning is not just something that we can put into a textbook or into an ideology or into a ritual. Meaning is the experience of connection, the experience of wholeness. And that's why people meditate. That's why I meditate. That's why you meditate, I think.
No, very, very interesting. And you're saying that whether you're coming from no religion or whether you're coming from a religion, the religion or the basis is a belief of almost when you get to that space of emptiness, from which I understand meditation is about finding, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, of inner stillness, that it's inside there is where you're either spirituality, or if you're not spiritual, where the calmness comes in. Is it a question of openness, opening yourself up?
It's finding, yes. I mean, you could say that the first fruit of meditation is self-knowledge, self-awareness. But this is not so easy, because in order to know yourself at this level of your true self, of your deep self, you will have to get rid of or let go of many ideas about yourself that you've got addicted to or you got caught up in. There may be negative self-images. Very often we have negative ideas about ourselves. We're inadequate, we're not successful enough, all sorts of things, we have to let go of thinking about ourselves. That's the challenge of meditation. By taking the attention off that stream of thought, which is constantly running through our minds, that's where we begin to move from the head to the heart. And the heart is the symbol of our integrated self, of our true self, our whole self. So meditation is, in my tradition, called the prayer of the heart. So when I meditate, for example, I'm a Christian. It's very important to me that my Christian faith is integrated with my meditation. And my meditation has informed and keeps my Christian faith alive and fresh. And I'm constantly amazed at what that Christian faith tells me about the world, about myself. But when I meditate, I'm not thinking about God. I'm not speaking to God. I'm not asking God for anything. And as far as possible, I'm not talking to myself. I'm not thinking about myself or my problems or my plans or my issues. I'm trying to gently take the attention off myself so that I can move quite naturally by the force of gravity from the mind to the heart. And that's where self-knowledge is found. It's not thinking about yourself, it's just experiencing being. And I think this isn't a very difficult concept. There's a difference between being and doing. And clearly, you can't do anything unless you first exist. So being comes before doing.
Okay.
And in modern life, we have become disconnected from this experience of being. We're no longer human beings, we're human doings, and often running around in circles, chasing ourselves and exhausting ourselves. When we teach meditation, we simply teach the wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of all the traditions, which is to take time every day to be.